Good to see you guys. Richard Stockton is president and CEO of Braemar Hotels and Resorts, BHR. Love this guy because this is the hotel luxury market. And this is a real estate investment trust focused on investing in luxury hotels and resorts. And Richard spent his career at Morgan Stanley in real estate investment banking. And he went from the associate, he was a cart pusher all the way up to the manager of the store.
Yep.
That would be my analogy.
Way to do it.
From Costco, you know, you're a cart pusher.
Best.
Yeah.
He went from associate up to managing director, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
What's up, man? Good to see you, Richard.
How you doing? You know, it was worse than that. I was the guy who had to make the presentation books.
Oh,
which we had to print out and
Brutal.
that was
page
before they had
numbers.
PowerPoint, right? They didn't even have
Yeah.
PowerPoint back then.
PowerPoint. We didn't have PowerPoint, so
No
we had
kidding.
little page numbers we'd stick, and then we'd copy them.
You know, we've never talked about, because this is an infotainment show, but people emailed me last time, and we should have spent some time on drilling down to this thing. I know we defined real estate investment trust, but why don't we spend a little bit of time on that and why it's important to be criteria specific when you're looking at real estate investment trusts, because you could be looking at hotels, you can be looking at commercial real estate, you can be looking at apartment buildings, and this happens to be something in the hotel space. Talk about that for just a second, Richard.
Yeah, sure. You know, real estate investment trusts initially started in the late 60s as a means to give the average person the ability to invest in real estate because the lot sizes tended to be out of reach for many people. And over time, the laws, which originally provided tax exemption for these corporations, have evolved into a market that now specializes in certain types of real estate. So you can have lodging REITs, which is one that I run. You can have a REIT focused on apartments, one on offices, one on industrial, to give the investors the ability to express a view about a sector. Right? They could be very interested and very comfortable in multifamily. They could be a little wary of office, which is happening right now, or they want to own a piece of a luxury portfolio of hotels. And that's a very tangible investment for them, and that's what we offer with Braemar Hotels.
So, Richard, when you go into a deal, do you guys do the development as well, or do you come in post-development?
Yeah, typically REITs have limitations on the amount of development you can do. So there are very small amounts of our balance sheet we're able to allocate towards that. Historically, we haven't taken on a new ground-up hotel development, but we will, for instance, develop an existing hotel in terms of expanding, or in terms of, for instance, adding branded residential townhomes. So we're building these ski chalets at the Ritz-Carlton Lake Tahoe that will then sell to owners, and it's a ski in, ski out, 3,000 to 5,000 square foot condominium. So we'll do kind of add-on development, but we haven't really stepped into ground up just yet.
Hey,
We
Richard.
should go check that out.
Yeah, I think we should. I think we need to do conduct some due diligence.
Let's go see what this
for the winter
ski
time
and
to
ski
make
out
sure.
looks like.
Hey, Richard, you obviously have a ton of experience in this area. What made you go in this area versus, let's say, commercial buildings or residential housing and so on and so forth? What made you go in this direction?
Yeah. Well, as a young buck, I got one of my first jobs working in a restaurant, and that was my initial exposure to the hospitality industry, and ultimately became a cook at a restaurant during high school and into college. And I attended the Cornell Hotel School. So I've always had this special place in my heart for hotels. I left Cornell and when I graduated, and I went into real estate generally, and then got exposure to all different property types. But about 8 years ago, I got a call to ask if I wanted to interview for the job of a hotel lodging REIT, CEO. And there was some ways, going back to my roots.
Yeah.
And so I've always enjoyed the hotel industry. It's fun, it's exciting. As you say, the due diligence is interesting.
Yeah.
So you get to see a lot of fun places.
Let's talk about Braemar for a second, because you guys are intrinsically attached at the hip to decisions that are made in government, including interest rates, employment, how the economy is doing, and so on and so forth, especially in your specific category. Interest rates in the short term are reducing. I'm not sure what the long bond's doing, because that's what mortgage rates tie to. But how important is all that to you guys? Is that a big metric for you guys in making decisions?
Yeah, it's extremely important to us. We structured our balance sheet to be almost entirely floating rate debt. And the reason we did that is to try to mirror the activity of the hotel industry in good times and bad times. So we're a little bit different than other types of real estate investment because we don't have long-term leases, right? Our leases tend to be 1 or 2 nights. So what we want to do is be able to be responsive to that with our balance sheet. So for instance, if there's a downturn and we see our top line eroding, we use floating rate debt because that usually means the Fed will cut rates aggressively to offset that. And so we start to benefit when rates get cut. Conversely, when the economy is doing very well, and if it gets overheated, we're doing great from a top line perspective. The Fed will increase rates, but that's okay because again, we are moving in parallel with those interest rate movements that reflect the economic cycle. So in this environment, we've got much higher interest rates in an attempt to quell inflation, and we've seen inflation in our portfolio, which has been great. But it would be nice now that we're seeing a leveling off of our hotel revenue, that rates come down again. And we're very much looking forward to that.
So if you overlay everything you just said with your recent acquisitions of Four Seasons Scottsdale and the Ritz-Carlton Dorado Beach, what was the economic climate like when you started those transactions versus when you closed those transactions? Because it's a moving target, right?
Yeah, I like to say we like to zig when others are zagging.
Yeah.
And I think that was an example of that. In 2021 and then into 2022, we got aggressive on the acquisitions front. It was a period where interest rates were very high, but we saw potential in these particular assets, and there was a dearth of buyers, right? There weren't many other buyers to compete with. And a lot of the private equity firms were on the sidelines. They tend to use higher leverage, so they were very much impacted by the higher interest rates. We tend to use lower leverage so we can be aggressive. And so that's why we made our move. And we raised money in the non-traded preferred equity market at a 7.5% dividend rate. Mm-hmm. And then we used that to acquire assets that had an initial yield at or greater than that. And that was the case of the Four Seasons in Scottsdale and the Ritz-Carlton Reserve Dorado Beach.
Rich, you just demonstrated quantitative easing in a publicly traded company where, or something close to it, where you are taking advantage of those metrics. If I know if people want to get involved with you folks, it's easy. You can go to bhrreit.com. But if there's people that just want to stay in your hotels, is there an easy link to go to, or is that the same thing?
Yeah, so our hotels are managed by a lot of the big brands, namely Marriott, Hyatt,
Four Seasons,
Hilton.
for example.
And so the best way to book is through those websites. You can see our portfolio at bhrreit.com and then click through to their website for the actual booking process.
Last of all, I asked you this last time. How are you feeling about the next, let's say, 15 months now, with the end of this year and fully 2025?
Look, I think all the forecasts for the industry are fairly lackluster top-line growth. We might see a little bit of inflation, but what I'm excited about is, again, our cost of capital coming down as the Fed moves to cut rates. I don't see any sort of recession in the cards, and so it'll be a period where I think we'll start to flourish because, frankly, the supply of new hotels is dramatically down.
You got to keep coming back with us, man. It is fascinating. And when you come in studio at some point, when you come to San Diego.
Yep.
Yes.
Thanks, pal.
I can do that. Yeah.
It's Stockton. BHR. There's Stockton. Much more Big Biz coming up. Stand by.